Ladies, gentlemen, data lovers, welcome to a new session here on LinkedIn where we are going to talk about bridging the gap between data and the business. It's Pio Marolla here, CEO of ThinkLinkers, and it's a pleasure to welcome you all in this sunny morning. Now, I'm here from the ThinkLinkers headquarters in the wonderful city of Prague. The first thing I'd like to ask you, since this is probably, a morning session, so I expect many of you to be from Europe, I'd like to ask you where are you coming from? Drop it in the comment. I'm really curious to see how's it going there, where you coming from, what's the weather like there. We have an unusual 30 plus degrees actually here in Prague, which is never a bad thing. Natalia here, of course. Yes, sunny indeed. Sunny indeed. Now, today we're covering a very important topic because it is undeniable that there is often a gap between the data and the business. And without addressing this gap, any data initiative that we want to, run or start will hardly succeed. I have the pleasure of having a partner, a great partner of ours, actually. For those of you who were at the marathon last week, of course, you had the pleasure of meeting him. We have the CEO of Hakuna, Andreas Oisma. Andreas, of course, will walk us through his own experience in how to address this gap, how to bridge it, how to walk it with confidence. And I'd like to invite you all as well to ask questions. After all, sessions such as this are valuable when you're able to ask questions and get insights that can be applicable to your own data journey. So we have here Helen, fantastic, sunny Denmark there, and Julia from Germany, fantastic. Welcome everybody. Now, without any further ado, let us invite on stage Andreas Oisma.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for being with us.
How are you doing,
sunny
Andreas?
Amsterdam.
Oh,
Doing
fantastic
today.
Very good, very good. We're having a very early and hot summer, actually. I think a little bit everywhere throughout Europe.
For once, finally.
Yep.
Abu Dhabi. Yes, that must be sunny.
Indeed. Now, as I said, I had the pleasure of speaking to you, Andreas, last week. But in order to give a bit more context to the audience and to give a bit of an introduction to those in the audience that don't know you yet, tell us something about yourself.
Right. So I'm a pretty old guy that's been in this profession for 25 years now. And to be honest with you, I fell right into the crack. So I'm here emerging from that crack between the business and the data. I started as a very technical professional. I was a data engineer. Back then, it was called ETL engineer. I started as a junior consultant for a consultancy firm working for a bank. Spent there a year without a minimal idea what that bank was actually doing. So how does it work? What do they do except for storing money? That was the degree of my understanding. I was in oil and gas, and everything I knew about oil and gas after I finished the assignment was don't drink gasoline. And even that I wasn't entirely sure about. And fast forward many years, I was facing the need to implement GDPR, which just hit the market or just hit the regulations. And that forced me to go and start talking to the business. I was accountable. I had to do it first time right. There was no room for mistake. So I had to go and understand what the business was all about. And there, what I learned was they couldn't answer my questions because they didn't understand the answer. So I was that weird guy asking weird questions, completely disconnected from their reality. And they were just like, okay, not sure what you want from us, not sure why you even exist.
Yeah,
So,
I hear that often. So,
yeah.
how did you move from there? What happened afterwards?
From there, I kept observing this problem. So, as data people, we had the privilege of having this big hype around data. So data is an asset, data is a new oil. And I think that hype made us a bit arrogant, not in a bad sense of word, but we started feeling entitled. So now we are the ones sitting on this new oil. And that means we're going to tell the business what exactly to do to support us into turning that oil into some valuable product. So we started introducing frameworks, telling the business what to do, assigning responsibilities to them on top of what they were already doing. Of course, they weren't very happy. So what I kept observing is a lot of data-centric programs, be it a digital transformation, be it a merger and acquisition, failed because apparently the business wasn't as interested as they should have been, seeing the value those projects were promising. And the failure rate here is staggering. I mean, we're talking about 75% of digital transformation programs that either completely shut down or ended up delivering a very niche product targeting just one silo. So it wasn't literally a digital transformation, it was just automation of some process. We see a very high rate of merger and acquisitions that don't go through because the two companies just fail to connect their information. So they fail to act as one, they fail to have this full overview of what's going on. And that made me think, can it really be so that business that should be interested, that initiated and sponsored those programs, that they stop being interested somewhere along the way because, well, why? So I had a better look. I had a privilege to actually be able to do research where I was in my last corporate function. So I started an R&D team, and we started looking at what's really going on there. And what's really is going on there is basically this lack of empathy, this lack of understanding that the business is very focused with their goals, and their goals are put on them within their own silo. They have their KPIs. Going outside of their silo to reach someone else's KPIs, it's not really in their immediate interest. And with data folks, we kept pushing them to go out of their silo and do something there, be it standardizing the terminology, being working out the enterprise data model, or exercise data ownership on enterprise level. And that just didn't align with what they would naturally normally do. So we created a task for them, we created responsibility for them
Mhm.
without clear benefits for those specific business representatives. And that is what we needed to solve.
Yes, I see. I completely see that. You know, there is this hype around data-driven. Data is everything that you have today. But it's kind of wasted when, again, it's just about the framework being applied on the business side without any clarity. And you're right, you know, why would anyone want to do something if there is no clear objective, if it doesn't align with the KPIs that they have? And I think also that the rhetoric that certain organizations in the software industry adopted, such as, you know, every company is a data company, every, you know, this kind of rhetoric really doesn't work. Because when I hear that, I think, no, you know, not every company is a data company. A company is a lot more than that. There is so many, you know, there are products, there is curiosity, there is people, there is empathy, and a lot of other things that are instead belittled by this kind of rhetoric. What do you think?
Yes, and it's not just about the business value, because business value is there, but it is about the value for that specific business expert that is tasked with managing the data. And
Yeah.
that is one thing. And the second thing is, of course, empathy and respect for that one business expert. Because what I see a lot of times, especially with master data management programs, but if you think about it, digital transformations, MDM, cross-silo AI implementations, they are first and foremost master data programs. So what I see is we go to that business expert, hopefully with a lot of curiosity, and we start asking questions. How does it work? How do you work? How do you use your systems? We listen to the answers, and then we say, well, no, we are going to mix their answers with everybody else's and create the standard one size fits none view. And they, the business expert, will have to adapt to that. So they will have to adopt terminology that isn't natural for them. They will have to think about the world in a way that isn't natural, isn't even useful for their process. And they will have to govern that synthetic reality that isn't their reality. So aside from being an extra task and not having a clear value for their specific process, it's also very scary. It is very scary to be the owner of something you don't really understand. And of course, we have data literacy programs for that, which unfortunately very often end up with us, the data folks, going to the business and teaching them how to be data folks.
Mm.
And actually, that's a funny thing. I was part of a program rescue on a digital transformation program, whereas I needed to go and ask the business folks, what's going on? Why are you not participating? Why are you not pushing it in the way everybody would expect you to? And what they told me was, well, you are pushing your discipline on us, but you could be minimally useful for us if we could help you understand our world, and you would spread that knowledge and help us spread that knowledge to the rest of the organization. Then you would be useful. Then we would work with us. But that's not what's happening.
Indeed. I think imposing the view on the business just ends up alienating them.
It does. It definitely does. A view and extra activities and the big governance meetings. So if you've been to a typical data council, there are a lot of people in there. Most tasks are not, or most topics are not relevant for everybody in the room. So it's a very tedious activity. It comes with a lot of documentation, notes, standards, policies. I'm yet to find one person that finds policies interesting, sexy, or engaging. Just the word policy makes me want to run.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So what can we do about that? Because there are programs like data literacy. There is also all the talk about data democratization. What's the right way to proceed with this initiative so that they stick?
I think it's not about business becoming data literate.
Mm.
I think it's about the data teams and the data platforms becoming business literate. And what that means is that knowledge that sits with the experts, the understanding on the information that they're handling, of the knowledge that they have, making that available to the rest of the organization and making that accessible as bits and bytes that you can feed to the computer and process them. That should be the focus of the data teams, not assigning the task of fixing bits and bytes to the business experts that, by the way, are busy with the core business as well on top of that. And that would be what that would require is understanding the business, but also taking the input from the business users and the business experts as it comes without trying to standardize, without trying to create one flat view of the reality and then use that to exchange information, but rather create an interpreter layer that understands all those different perspectives and terminologies and views, and use that to enable everybody to find information, to find it as data in the systems, and to use that data.
Well, Andreas, it sounds great, but maybe it's easier said than done. I see still a lot of resistance from one side and the other to find, this sort of middle layer of interpretation where communication and information can be shared in a way that involves both parties. Have you found, a way to make it happen?
We definitely did. And I think the reason why it's happening is that people want things to be easy. Yes,
Mm.
simple is always good. But unfortunately, when it comes to data people, they tend to want things to be easy to them. So they're not the business experts. So they want the business made easy for the data folks to proceed. It should
Yeah,
be the other way around. It should be the data made simple for the business folks. And
yeah,
once we adopt that paradigm, it becomes very easy. It becomes easy on both sides. Because imagine you don't have to run around and try to assign data ownership. You have it already. It's already there. Business experts are your information owners. And because they use data to automate their processes, they're also data owners, but from their own perspective. They're responsible for the quality and they need the quality and they will take care of the quality because they need it to have their business process run. That means that there will be sides of the data quality that's not interesting to the specific business expert because they do nothing with that side of data. They do nothing with that set of attributes or even that perspective, which means that you can have another knowledge owner taking care of that side. And the only alignment that needs to happen is how do our worlds connect? So, where is this bridge between my world and yours? And that's where the data teams come into play to facilitate that bridge between business and business. So, we are a facilitator, we are enabler, we are not the goal.
yeah, yeah. And I also see you mentioned before about standardization and frameworks and all of that, and generally speaking about MDM programs. There is a perception that these things are quite complex, time consuming, expensive, and it clashes with the way the business is moving forward nowadays, which is, in a
Correct.
more of an agile manner. Whenever you start placing, standards and overly bracketed things, no, it doesn't work. That's where you start creating the first ridge between the two, isn't it?
Yes, that's exactly the problem. So if you look at certain industries, for example, the banking industry, oil and gas industry, regulations change every 2 years. In oil and gas specifically, every 2 years, you might even end up with a full rehaul of your product domain. So if you spend even a year, even 6 months in analysis phase of your MDM program, you are late and you are looking at migrations.
Hmm.
And you will be in this perpetual cycle of migrations that never ever ends. So your program never ends. What it does, it keeps spikes out new programs. So it becomes like a hydra. You delivered one part, three more are there now to handle. So the answer to that would be not to try to standardize, would be to try to understand and connect the different perspectives on one hand, and to do it in such a way that is very, very agile, which means that your information, so your business side and your data, they need to be not just connected via metadata that describes what the column means, but you should actually connect them on a technical level. So when
Hmm.
I ask a business question, I should immediately access the data that answers it, or at least the master data. So of course we're talking semantic layer, but we're talking semantic layer plus plus. And this
Yeah.
approach is actually not just a dream. We've had experiences with a digital transformation, the very same which I was actually in rescue of, where it was stuck for 2 years on master data. We could deliver master data using this methodology within 5 weeks. So in 5 weeks, from zero to systems talking to each other and data being reconciled to deliver it to the product, to the new digital product. Merger and acquisition took us 7 days to
Hmm.
enable three systems to communicate with each other from two different companies. And this is the speed that today's business needs. This is mandatory. It's not optional. It's not exotic or experimental. This is mandatory. And the data teams have to make do to stay relevant.
Yeah, yeah. We'll get to this in a moment because, of course, the MDM program that is stuck for 2 years is something that I think many in the audience are familiar with it. So we'll get to that in a second. I would like to take the question here from Julia. How did you pick up the responsible ones of the special business units of industrial companies, communication strategy, medium? Experience shows they don't want talking.
My experience is different here. They do like talking and they do want to talk, but they want to be heard. And we data folks, we suffer from this. Tell me everything you know, and then maybe I will come back to you, but definitely I will come back to you misrepresenting your story. That's why they don't want to have much to do with it. And what's worse, in 2 weeks, someone else will come again and ask exactly the same questions again and again and again. At a certain point, they just get tired. But effectively, in the business units, you have the experts that love what they're doing. There is a reason they grew from juniors to experts. And the reason is they love what they're doing. They want to innovate. They're very passionate. Uh, in my experience, once you demonstrate to those people that you are here to actually hear them and take their story as it comes and run with that and make it available to the rest of the organization to make sure they are not bombarded with the same questions all the time, in my experience, they won't stop talking. It's just very engaging for them. For them, it's finally somebody's here to hear me out and represent my knowledge to others.
And
And
this
it's
is
a very natural process. It's not like a method to find them or to entice them.
this is where empathy steps in, as you were mentioning earlier. And this is where the value of opening your ears to listen for real, rather than, listening to then come back with an answer. Like listening, waiting until the end of the question to tell them why they're wrong. That's a different story, And you're very right there. Everyone is passionate about something. Everyone wants to be heard. Data folks want to be heard too. So why not extending this benefit to everyone else in the organization in order to involve them in the project? Isn't it?
Yes, exactly, exactly. And to that point, by the way, talking about oil and gas, because I did bring up an example. After a program in an oil and gas company, I feel comfortable talking about how refineries run. I feel comfortable discussing dangerous goods transport regulation. Why? Just because all those experts gave me their answers and so much more.
Yeah.
And I think the point here is for data teams, what's the one most important quality of a data person is curiosity. You need to love gathering that knowledge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Here, of course, thank you, Julia, for the question, first of all. And we have another one here from Helen. How did you bridge the different systems in such a short time span during the migration of the 3 systems?
Right. So systems and people are very different in that systems love standardization. Standards in IT save you money and save you time. People can't really be standardized. But there is one common aspect. That is, each of them talks their own language. Of course, the language of the systems isn't words and sentences. It's the identifiers, it's the data model that systems use to store information as data. And the way we bridged those 3 systems so quickly was exactly the same as we approached to the business experts. So learning how systems talk about master data, capturing it in a machine readable way, in a special format that we have developed, and it's one of our accelerators that we offer to the market today, and simply use an impartial interpreter layer on top of those 3 systems. So we don't even ask them to migrate. We simply act as an interpreter on a conference. We stand behind them. and we translate their message to the language the other system understands, which means the systems might still need to be migrated and reconciled. But we remove that task from the critical path so that merger and acquisition can go on. And then when they have time, they had a moment to breathe, all the political hurdles are overcome because M&A is usually a very busy time also for stakeholders. It's a very politically loaded time for them. So once that's over, they can calmly approach the optimization of their resulting IT landscape. It's not on the critical path anymore.
Got it. Got it. So this is like a selective slash agile approach to get things started right, let's say, and then you can always kind of address and improve as you go forward. Yeah.
Exactly. And agile is a very important thing because agility also has something to do with how you store the data and how you connect the model to the data. So the approach we take and the approach our accelerators take allow us to do data migration by simply changing the model. So the data follows suit, which means that we can start very small and we know we are probably wrong. The model is probably wrong. We don't know anything or we don't know everything. We know very little. Yet we can enable that data exchange. And when we know more, we can evolve, adjust without any impact to the source or the target of that data. So the whole complexity, the whole unknown unknowns, they're all contained in that interpreter. It's very similar to how you learn the language. You start with small, simple sentences. And if you keep practicing, you keep learning, in 2 years, you can do a conference in that language.
Exactly. There's a question here from Ahmed. In the interpretation layer, how do you deal with changing business requirements?
Well, we have two kinds of changes. So one is a scope change. So I want more or I want something else. That is not a problem. Actually, I love when this happens because the knowledge we already gathered and the data we already gathered, it's still relevant for the business. So this kind of changes, they force us to learn even more because the idea isn't MDM that supports just a small fraction of the business. The idea is that the static picture of how your business is built, so your MDM master and reference data, covers your whole business, all of it. And it's all interconnected. It's not split into domains like customer and vendor. I mean, a customer can also be a vendor. You want to know that, don't you? So you kind of want to manage that whole thing holistically. So this kind of scope changes, we welcome. And of course, there is a project management that has to deal with changing requirements and timelines, but that's independent from data. Another thing that can happen is we simply got it wrong. We thought it would work a certain way, but it doesn't. And that kind of change we usually initiate because by working with real data, you can get awareness of this kind of issues very early in the process. One of the things that hinders digital transformations is, okay, we don't have data that spans across the silos. We can't yet reconcile the silos. Let our MDM team be busy with that. We will assume what the data is and what it means, and we'll proceed and build on that assumption, which of course sometimes it happens to be a completely wrong assumption. So you have to completely redo your project. So with this approach, you learn this very, very early because you start building with real data, quality that it is, whatever it means, all the complexity of it, you get exposed to this from day one.
There's another question here from Peter. Do you get some value mostly from governance and ownership from the data mesh approach?
Of course, it was the first step to remove this big enterprise, standardize it all kind of thing. So it was the first step into acknowledging that there are different perspectives in every organization and that each perspective has the right to their own terminology and the ways they look at the world. However, data mesh also has limitations. I'm speaking about data products. So I like the food example or the food analogy. Data products are airplane meal. So on the airplane, on the flight, you can get chicken or you can get vegetarian. And you cannot say that you want no onion or you want something else. You get what you get, even in business class. So,
Hmm.
and some companies have data products that are economy class meals. Some companies have data products that are business class meal, but a prepackaged meal nevertheless. However, innovation doesn't stop at the data or information that's most used or is needed for everyone. There are those small pockets of knowledge that maybe one person in the organization might need, and that one person might bring billions to the company by using that knowledge. And that is where data mesh needs to be extended and become knowledge mesh with knowledge owners that represent their business knowledge, but then all of it.
Hmm. What's the difference between data, knowledge, and information?
Right. So the information is the only thing that matters. When I'm telling you I sold 100 kilos of product X to customer Y, this is an information. So you understand what I'm talking about. Now, if I want to do this and send this same message to you and 1,000 colleagues of yours, I want to do this electronically. And that's where my information needs to be encoded, become bits and bytes, get structured, and become data. And of course, the product X and the customer Z, I'm going to refer to them by a certain identifier. So I'm going to represent them in the language of the system. So
Yeah.
this is how the system talks about client Z. They're using ID 123 to refer to that client Z. And that is data. And you can see that data is understandable to you and I, but if a third person comes in and, okay, what is this table? What's going on here? They don't know. Somebody has to tell them. And sometimes we use metadata, data catalogs, descriptors of the column to tell them, but that is not enough. Because if that third person doesn't understand what exactly we are doing, it doesn't really resonate with them. It's a bit like Googling for a topic that you don't really understand. There is a whole article in Wikipedia, but it doesn't make you much smarter, does it?
Hmm. Hmm. Now, I'm curious about your perspective on the whole hype that created around artificial intelligence. Do you think that this is something that brings companies closer to embracing data journeys or investing in MDM, or it's something that instead distracts and fuels the wrong thing or the wrong approach to it?
But as always, it's AI is just a tool. It can be good, it can be bad. It really depends how you're going to use it. And for some companies, I see that the hype is so big that they feel very frustrated. They feel everybody is doing AI and we don't. And that means we're missing out. And that means we want to do AI. I've literally seen data strategies that say AI adoption.
Hmm.
AI
Yeah.
is just a tool and it sounds like Excel adoption. Well, great. You install it, now what? How are you going to use it? So, what is the business strategy you're pursuing using this new technology? It's just a new technology. It's nothing more. It's very smart. It's very good, but it's no different to basically any technology hype that there was. For some companies, this becomes a fuel for knowing their business better, knowing their data better, and using that not just for AI, but also for process optimization, also for fact-driven decisions. So they use AI as a pretext to build that foundation, and then they use that foundation for a lot more than just AI. And that's the right way to do this. And of course, you can have AI and completely skip the data foundation. You can do AI in one silo
Mm.
where everybody knows what's going on. There is no need to reconcile across perspectives, and you can automate the task using AI technologies there very successfully and not suffer from the lack of data foundation on enterprise level.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. Now, I'd like to get back to to the numbers that you mentioned before. The particular approach that you've adopted in order to get long projects and long integrations unstuck. And I'd like to ask you, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because it sounds, in a way, it sounds too good to be true. So, what is this methodology consist in?
Again, it's based in empathy. It's based in understanding what is the real value versus what is the perceived value for us data or IT folks. So the real value of MDM on a digital initiative is we can look across the silos, we can reconcile data from multiple systems and maybe exchange data with multiple systems. Whether we are doing it semi-manually in Excel using something without a shiny interface is not important at all. It is important for future, for sustainability of this whole implementation. It's certainly important for IT, but the business goal can be reached in a quick and imperfect manner. And that's the step one. So let's not spend too much time with shiny technologies, big integrations, real-time messaging. Let's do it simply, but let's unlock the progress because it will give you two things. Ability for the project team to pick up and do something on top of that data, and the ability of the project teams to understanding what the data really looks like. So to build on a real life thing rather than assumptions. So it's very important. The second thing is interpreter instead of standardizer. We never do huge workshops. As Hakuna, you won't see us presiding over a 30 people workshop. We just take knowledge from the experts. We don't need a lot of people in the room, especially people who don't understand the reality of that expert. We will connect those realities on both business level and system level. And of course, we'll go through validations, but that can be done in a very non-intrusive manner for the business. Because that is one of the biggest blockers of progress during project initiation phase. I need 40 stakeholders around the table, and I can get them all in one room in about 3 months from now, looking at the calendars.
Okay. That's but you must still face quite a lot of resistance.
Actually, funnily enough, it comes mostly from traditional IT teams. Like, how are you not doing enterprise data model? How are you not using enterprise business glossary? How are you not using our data catalog to do metadata? Well, that is, of course, the answer to that is if we do what we've been always doing, we get what we've been always getting. And we've always been getting about 75% failure of those initiatives.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Imposing rules and imposing this is really turns the business side off, and it's very difficult to meet in a team and get meet in a room and get anything done. You might do it once, as you said, but the second time, no, I don't want to talk to the data team anymore. No,
Yeah. And actually, I have a very funny example. Somewhere during my consultancy youth, we had that fantastic idea to create a global database for materials to enable circular economy. And we got a lot of experts in the room, physicists from the universities, people from the building companies, architects, people from investment banks. It was fantastic. The engagement into this idea was just fantastic. Everybody wanted it. And we spent 8 days with all those people in the room, and we didn't even come to the definition of what is a material versus what is a substance. It died right there.
So perhaps something you would like to add here. Helen asked, how do you ensure buy-in with a low amount of stakeholders?
Well, the fact is we don't have low amount of stakeholders. We just have low number of stakeholders that have to simultaneously allocate their time to us. So we will still visit everybody, but we won't get them all in one room. because getting them all in one room, it starts with making sure they understand each other, which makes sure we need to align terminology first, share perspectives. And by the end of that, when that is done, everybody's already tired of that session and they start drifting away. So we will go to them one by one. We will share the results to everyone and we will keep visiting them. And especially in the outcome and the product we will deliver, they will be able to see and recognize their perspective. And one very funny example, again, on a digital transformation for a logistical company.
Yeah.
The one missing pin, how did we solve the user adoption of a new digital product? Simply, if you are from logistics and you are logging, you see terminals and cargo, and you can select a cargo from the list of cargoes. If you are from planning department, you log in and you see depots and products. Just that. Because of course, if you log in and you have to operate something in that application and you're not sure what it really is it the same thing as my terminal or something different or almost? Yeah, that already puts you into a position where you say, well, this looks great. I'm sure it works great, but I don't have time to figure out exactly how it works. So, I'll do it later. I absolutely promise I'll come back and I'll start using this new product. But for now, I have an emergency. I'm in firefighting mode. I'll do it in Excel like I did before, because at least I'm sure what I'm doing. No amount of training can fix that.
Yeah, I can relate to that too. If I find an obstacle at the first instance, I will probably tomorrow. And
I do it too.
adopting a new tool or using a new technology is no easy task, particularly if you're busy with your normal work and with the stuff that you have at hand. So I'm not surprised, that Excel is still so used and popular, because whenever a
Yeah.
new tool comes in and it doesn't have and we're not able to establish familiarity with it, or it doesn't have the right user interface, the business is not going to want to touch it.
Yeah, and that's why we actually, part of our methodology is information UX. So we all know about user experience. And I think the hype started somewhere around 2010, 2011, where all of a sudden IT folks recognized that applications need a pleasant experience for their business user. But now we also need to recognize that the consumers of information, the ones that are looking at the screen and consume information and knowledge from it, also need a proper experience, terminology they can understand, the way things are presented that do resonate with how they're used to look at the world. So it's very important. IUX, I think, and I predict, would be a topic just like UX was.
Indeed, makes perfect sense. Let us see how it evolves. Do you already call it IUX? Is it a
Well, we
term
call
that
it IUX.
yeah.
Not yet. I think it will be, however, because we see more and more that there is a big resistance, especially now you can create very smart tools using AI, riding AI hype. But if users don't adopt them simply because they don't recognize the single words on the screen or the structure of that application, it's a big waste of money. It's a big waste of potential.
Yeah.
So we really hope that there is more awareness about information user experience.
Very good. Well, we're going to see how this evolves.
Yeah.
So, Andreas, lots of questions, lots of interesting insights. Time is almost up, but would you like to leave some, some words to the audience that asked questions today and watched us? Some key takeaways that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I would have three key takeaways. And one is hiring data teams. It's a hot topic. Everybody now needs a data team. They finally realize that. So, what is the most important thing in data teams, especially the ones coming into contact with business? To me, that's curiosity. Everything else can be taught. And we also, as Hakuna, we provide those courses. So if you would like to make a business analyst into a data professional, we can really help there. But curiosity cannot be taught. So people need to want to drink that knowledge. They need to be a knowledge sponge, because that helps them become a partner of the business instead of alienating the business.
Oh, yeah.
The second takeaway would be about hiring a data company. So a lot of boutique data consultancies in there. And how do you choose one? My recommendation would be choose a doer. Don't choose a strategist if their output is large slide packs, skip, and prioritize the company that would deliver a product, even imperfect, but something tangible. Even if it just outputs into Excel and you can scroll through that Excel, it doesn't matter. Learning by doing and analysis by prototyping is way more powerful than long strategy sessions, especially in today's world where you just don't have time for all that slideware. And the third takeaway is regarding the data platform. Business literate data platform is the way to go if you really want to be strategic partner of the business. Thank you.
Well, Andreas, what a way to close. I think we should talk about this again, because these key takeaways are indeed particularly, I really like your point about curiosity as a parameter to take into consideration when hiring data teams. Because before we used to look into data teams and data candidates as people possessing mostly hard skills, right? And nowadays we're seeing more and more that, yeah, those can be taught. But if
very easily as well.
Exactly. And aside from the fact that it can be taught, when you think about technology, it's evolving at such a speed that you always need to learn and relearn anyway. But if you're closed-minded, if you're not ready to listen, if you're not ready to engage with another mentality in another part of the company, everything else doesn't matter, does it?
Exactly. Exactly. And what we see a lot in AI, that this is becoming such a big problem that I see companies who just take business expert with a bit of knowledge of statistics and they're trying to make them into data scientists just because they can't connect to the actual data scientists from the data team or AI team. And that,
Yeah.
of course, it's a waste of a business professional, and it's extremely hard on everybody.
Indeed. Well, what's the best way to find out more about you, Andreas? If someone would like to follow up and ask you more questions, what would be the best way?
Absolutely. It would be my pleasure. Please connect on LinkedIn. Just drop me a message. I don't bite. Or I will also put a Calendly link into the comments so you can just book a session with me. And I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you. And thank you.
Very good. Very good. We should do it again, actually. This was a very interesting talk and very
Absolutely.
good questions, actually.
Yeah. Thank you, folks.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone in the audience. Thank you, Andreas, and I wish you all a great continuation of the day.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.